Good morning, everyone. Happy Friday. Welcome back to another episode of Maker That Money, the podcast where we talk about turning your hobby into your jobby. I am Pooch of Repkord. With me, as always, my trusty co-host, Mr. Andrew Mayhall of 3D Gloop. And today we have a very special guest, Mr. Frank Ippolito, the big cheese at Thingergy Inc. out of Burbank, California. Frank, welcome. Thank you for being on the pod with us today.
Good morning, guys. Good morning.
Oh man, look who's chipper this morning. Threw a little water
Yeah.
in your face when you got up this morning. Looking good, dude. Looking good, brother.
Yeah.
For those of us out there who don't know you, you got to tell everybody who you are, what you do, what is Thingergy, all the good stuff. Go.
All right. Well, I'm Frank, and at Thingergy, we make things.
It
It's
couldn't
like
be easier.
Very
It-
descriptive.
well, it feels like the like dumbest name I could have come up with. But I don't know. I couldn't come up with anything better at the time, so we just went with Thingergy.
The logo literally says "We make things,"
Yeah.
and it's a fair descriptor.
awesome.
Well, okay. So when I started this company, over 10 years ago or whatever,
Yeah.
I came from the makeup effects industry, and everybody was like such and such effects or blah blah blah, such and such props, or
Sure.
it's like I don't want to like pigeonhole myself of just creatures or just makeup or just effects or just whatever. So
Right.
it's like no, we make things. And on the back of my old business card when it was just me, it's just that I make things. So
There you go. So you went the opposite of pigeonholing. You just went broad
Yeah,
strokes.
everything,
And
yeah,
which is an interesting business, strategy too. I mean, I could kind of see some really cool avenues in which you could take that. So,
it's I probably in hindsight would have picked something that was easier to spell, or rolled off the tongue a little bit easier, because sometimes people are like, is thingery?
Thingery?
No, it's Thingergy.
Yeah,
It's like,
yeah.
so in hindsight, kind of dumb, but I don't know, whatever. There's so many like creative agencies that we work for that have the dumbest names on the planet. So I was like, well, I might as well be another one of those dumb names. So,
Okay, so we've covered the name, but tell people the type of things that you're making, because this is very humble just to say, oh, we make things. Like you
Yeah.
make epic things.
Well, like I said before, I kind of started in the makeup effects industry for about 10 years. I did prosthetics and special effects for movies and stuff. Worked on things like Pirates of the Caribbean and Chronicles of Riddick, Buffy the Vampire Slayer. I worked for
Wow.
all these like
Small
amazing
titles.
makeup artists and other effects people. I never worked at like the big shops like Rick Baker or Stan Winston. It was always for like smaller individuals, so it was much more of like a small business kind of way of doing things. But the movie industry is ridiculous, and so I ended up kind of doing my own thing, getting my own little clients, and started doing things that were more prop oriented, which I found kind of scratched the same itch as doing makeup effects. When I was younger, I just wanted to make creatures. And you always have this idea like, well, that's what I got to do to be happy. But I found that building props and building other things still made me happy. And so I kept getting more clients, needed more space, needed some more help, more space, more clients, more space. And now I'm in 13,000 square feet, and we fluctuate between 10 and 30 employees, depending on what the job is.
Yeah. And it's an awesome space. I've been down there. I've seen it with my own two eyes. It's a really good. This is what number of shop are you in? Because you've moved a few times now.
Yeah. So, well, when I first started doing stuff on my own, I was just working out of my bedroom. I had actually moved my bed out of my bedroom, and I was just sleeping in the living room, and my bedroom was the workshop.
Yeah.
And I only did that for a couple of months, and it was just ridiculous. And then I got a live work loft, and so I had probably about 600 square feet of workspace.
Okay.
And then I started sharing like an industrial workspace with a sculptor friend of mine named Mike Hill.
Mm.
And then I outgrew that after about a year or two. And I got my own shop space next to him. So it was about 1,000 square feet.
wow.
And then outgrew that and went up to 2,500, then 3,600, then 10,000, then 14,000. And then now I'm in a little over 13 right now.
Yeah. And so what's next? 20, you can get it a high rise at some point, you know?
No, there's only like, I feel like I've kind of hit a ceiling for how much like my bandwidth can hold.
Uh-huh.
And to do something where I grow bigger, there needs to be a whole bunch of infrastructure that goes with it. There needs to be more project management. There needs to be like, it
Yeah.
just needs to be structured way different than the small like mom and pop business that I run by myself.
Yeah.
Sure.
And so to get to that, next level of, size and scope, I would probably need to take on either a partner or
Mhm.
merge with somebody or something to make this any bigger than it is right now.
Gotcha.
Um,
And we're going to talk about that. So the theme today is building for the future. And so I've got a laundry list of things, and I know we only have an hour, so we'll just have to do the best we can. But I want to talk to you about like sustainability, finding comfort, and we'll do all that. But we got to pause for a second, do our normal housekeeping, all that stuff. For those of you who are listening back after the fact on all the podcast platforms, we do record every Friday. What is it? Friday? It's Friday. Friday at 9 a.m. Pacific. We are on YouTube, and that's a great way to interact with us. If you have questions for us or for our guests, feel free to join us in the chat. We are delighted to see a lot of our regular friends and companions in the chat this morning. Good morning, Mayhall and Liz and Mike and all that stuff. And again, please like, subscribe, suggest to others, and interact with us. We've got our handles down below. Frank was being really modest and stuff, but if you want to see the caliber of what he's done, I would say, what would you say, Frank? Your probably your Insta feed is one of the best visuals for that.
Yeah, there's like, well, our website thingergyinc.com is pretty good. We're just about to redo that website, so that'll be even better in the next couple of months. And then Instagram, Thingergy Inc. and then Frank Ippolito at Thingergy.
Well, we got
Or
descriptions.
Frank Ippolito at Instagram. Yeah,
Frank, we've got descriptions for all of that down below. So open that up, take a look, and see what we're talking about. And I'm sure you'll have plenty of questions as you come across some of these projects that he's done. But I know you've done a lot of work. You've done some stuff like for movies certainly, but Disney. You're not just film and TV. You've done stuff for the gaming industry. Pretty much anybody that needs something awesome made, right?
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, and it's just word of mouth and reputational, I'm assuming, from what you've built over the years.
Mostly
you're not actively having to go out and sell. It seems like you keep pretty busy with it, but phone keeps ringing, huh?
Yeah, no, and for us, like social media doesn't really seem to move the needle at all either. So I don't post as much as a lot of other people do. Only out of lack of necessity. Like if I felt that I needed it, I'd probably post more.
That's interesting. I want to dive in on that in
interesting.
Just a second. But let's do our wins of the week because Frank, we're a very positive podcast here. We talk about we harness that good energy, block out the bad.
Look at us.
Yeah, look at us. Yeah. We're smiling, happy dudes here. And so
good morning.
Yeah. Good morning. So as always, I start by putting Andrew on the spot, mostly because I never think of my own win to begin with. But Andrew's going to talk about some win he's had this week. It could be in your personal life, can be your business life, and then if you're in the chat, guys, share your wins with us for this week. We want to hear about what's good in your life and happening. And Frank, you're on deck, so have it ready. Okay, go, Andrew. What do you got?
Yeah, well, so it's a progressive win, I'll call it. We haven't crossed the finish line yet, but we are on the market or not on the market, but looking in the market for a new space. As everyone kind of knows, we started Gloop out of my house, and it's basically grown to take it over entirely.
Frank can relate.
And we just got word from the city that we're located in that they are exploring the potential of allowing a variance for us to get a very particular building that's really close and would more than quadruple, if not quintuple, the size that we're currently in. So it's going to be cool, hopefully.
That's great, man. That's great. Awesome to hear. All right, Frank, what do you got? What's good in your life these days?
Oh, I got to go second? I thought you were going to go second.
No, I told you were on deck.
Well, I mean, to be honest, big win this week was actually having you down here, Pooch.
Oh, come on. Stop it.
No. I'm not just trying to jerk you off a little bit. Like he came down and helped us do some fine tuning and some massaging of our print farm to get a little bit more efficiency out of it and kind of homogenize some of the workflow. And I mean, other than the typical print failures like we always get, um, it's humming along and it's nice. And it was really good to kind of have that energy and be able to kind of upgrade some of our workflow and get things kind of chooching a little better.
That's very kind of you, sir. Totally unexpected, but we did do some massaging and had a good fun. And man, do you have an awesome team down there? I gotta say, shout out to Yelena and Gary and the rest of the crew. I felt very welcome and at home, and it was just fun and easy work, as if there is such a thing. So I'm glad to say we, I think we moved the needle. I wish I had a little more time because I'm just that I want to dive in, I want to perfect. But I know in business we don't have the luxury of perfecting things. Perfect is the enemy of good enough, right? As I say. But I think we got to a good result. So hopefully Frank feels like he got his money's worth and time's worth and didn't have to tolerate, putting up with me any longer than he had to. So that was,
it was great.
That was good. My win for the week, I'm gonna say I've been really hitting hard on some redesign work on our belt farm, which I've been just obsessed with. Anybody that has been following me for any period of time knows I love my belt printers and wall mounting things because I don't have a whole lot of space, and so we've come up with some interesting techniques there. But we've of course unleashed some limitations as we try to push the envelope of quality on that thing. So it's a great machine for just pooping out parts of a certain quality. But we've got some new designs in the works, and our partner in LDO Motors is doing some awesome stuff for us, getting like a higher grade of rail and gear that we need to really dial this thing in. So it feels like probably what a lot of those car tuners, it's like starting with a Honda Accord or something and then trying to put a blower, or just some ridiculous stuff on a really weird platform to start with. But given that it's cutting edge and there aren't really any other good options, that's what we decided to do and invest in. And so I'm encouraged by it, but it's, it's classic 2 steps forward, 1 step back kind of thing. So, but anyway, new designs, and hopefully we can convert that into some kits so we can eventually, biggest request I get is education around what we've done so other companies, other people can use it. And that's like always the last thing I have time to work on, because we're constantly changing it, and I don't want to sell it. I don't want to over, hype it until I feel comfortable with it, and I don't know when that's going to be. So we'll see. But anyway, good headway there. So good wins for the week. Thank you everybody for sharing, and let's push in a little bit on the meat and potatoes for this week. That's there it is. Get to the Italian. We got to pause. I got to say one of the best things about being down in Burbank with Frank is they have such better food options down there, and Frank knows all the best places, and he took me to this amazing like Italian market restaurant thing. And if you followed my Twitter earlier, you saw I was complaining. I learned that pasta sauce is considered a liquid by the TSA, so they confiscated my nice, awesome, pasta sauce, and I was sad about that. So that's a pooch rant for you, I suppose. They did tell me if I'd frozen it, I could have taken it, which makes no sense to me. So
it makes no sense.
So yeah, so if you have something that's potentially explosive, whatever. But anyway, good food. That was an awesome trip. That was another big win, I would say, for the week. The food was a good one as well. But meat and potatoes. Yes. Building for the future. So I think one of the common threads that all three of us have, and we're obviously in different parts. Andrew is still just, in what Frank was describing, kind of the early phase, just trying to move out of the basement, get that official space. They've been seeing explosive growth, which is awesome and all that stuff. But obviously to grow, you need to be able to have people helping you out and all that stuff. And you can't really just have a bunch of people show up in your basement. Or you can, but you question the legalities.
You can. It gets a little weird.
And then we've been in our shop space in about 3 years now, so I still feel very startup-ish. But I've got 2 employees and all that stuff. And then Frank has scaled. You said you've been anywhere to up to 15 or something at some point. Or?
We maxed out at like 33.
Holy
on one
smokes!
Wow.
Yeah,
and we're also a union company, so we're
we're
a unionized company, so all of our employees get benefits. They get healthcare and pension and everything through the unions.
Yeah,
Paid time off, all
let's
that stuff, right?
Nobody seems to like really ask me about paid time off, like because it's like a very
Oh,
well, it's a very freelance industry.
yeah.
Like the movie industry
okay.
is freelance. It's not like, you know, it's a little bit different than other businesses I get, and there's
Hmm,
not very many places that have like full-time employees. And as much
okay.
as, I've had people that have been with me for, like, Gary's been with me for like 7 years.
Yeah.
um there's not really like a, hey, I'm gonna take my paid time off. It's like, hey, I'm not gonna work this week, I'm gonna take off if you don't mind. I'm like, okay, sure.
Yeah.
Because it's a freelance industry.
But it's work hard, play hard too. Because I was gonna say, like, I didn't get this the vibe at all. Everybody that was there just seemed genuinely energized, wanted to be there, knew when it was crunch time.
Yeah.
But then they've got 11 o'clock lunch break like clockwork. That's Frank's policy, which is they
Okay.
have a good flow of things, and I love that. But what I was going to say was that the common thread that I think we have as makers kind of getting into business seems to be like you start this thing and then you get the flywheel turning, and then a lot of times you're like, where you're so busy with the growth
Hmm.
and the making and all that stuff, and it's like, where are we actually going with this? And so I want to take some time to talk about that. Obviously at some point I think we all want to be able to retire, and we always, so it's like, what are we trying to build, what is sustainable? Frank touched on this earlier too, like growing into the next giant thing is not necessarily, there's an equilibrium
Hmm.
that I think everybody has to assess for themselves, like where they're comfortable being. And there's different tools to manage that. I think, Frank, you talk on the union piece. This is new. I haven't experienced that before, and it didn't even occur to me the benefits that brings in terms of bringing in work, obviously establishing your reputation. Hey, you're a union shop, and so I know there's a lot of networking opportunity from that, and then all the benefits to the employees. Instead of us worrying about having to do it all ourselves, how do I pay my employees for healthcare and all that stuff?
Mhm.
A lot of that is managed through that, so that's a good way to go, and especially in the film industry and the movie industry where unionization is big down there, I can appreciate how valuable that is. Can we stay on that a sec? Can you talk about that
Yeah.
experience? And
Yeah.
was that the
Well,
goal from the jump?
no, it wasn't. Well, the goal from the jump was never even to start a business. I just wanted to work in the industry.
Right.
I
Right.
would have been completely content being a mold maker at some shop. I really love the technical aspect of things, and um, like, I came from the mold making department, kind of a thing.
Yeah.
And when I started getting my own jobs, that's when it turned into, like, growing a company and all the pitfalls of learning how to
Hmm.
navigate not only this industry but owning a company. Made plenty of mistakes. You know, pissed off plenty of people along the road. Like, I can't make everybody happy, and thankfully I've learned from those mistakes, whether what kind of people to watch out for, or how to
Mm.
not treat people the wrong way, or how to, like, how to talk to people
Hmm.
a little bit better, and quench my, like, Italian hot-headedness. um but it's all a learning experience, and if you don't take those pitfalls and grow from them, then you're going to be stagnant, and you're not going to be able to be successful and move on and get to your next day, because you're never going to fix anything. You have
Sure.
to fix those things. And
Hmm.
sometimes these things were, like, definitely my fault. Sometimes it was, a gray area. Sometimes that was the wrong person,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
to have around. So, being able to recognize what it is that I was doing wrong, or what decisions took me down the wrong path, and don't do that next time.
Yeah. Yeah. And so
Hmm.
you had this moment where you decided though that, well, if I'm going to get to where I want to be, I may as well just do it myself. I start my own company. And so do you remember what that
It
moment
was it was
was?
it wasn't even that. It was like, well, I have a client that doesn't it's not that's not cutting a check to Frank Ippolito for, $35,000. Like,
Mhm.
well, we need your business, we need your tax ID and all this stuff. And I'm like, give me a minute.
Oh,
Yeah.
I don't
And
have that.
Yeah.
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 yeah,
Yeah.
and all of this is out of necessity. Like, again, starting out as a freelance artist in this industry, most people are 1099.
Right.
You
Hmm.
fill out your 1099, you give somebody an invoice, which is totally not the right way to do it. The movie industry is upside down sometimes, especially smaller makeup effects shops, and individual makeup effects people. So I would do most stuff by 1099. So when I started the company, everybody was 1099 because it's
Right.
like, I don't know. I mean,
Mhm.
that's how it always was. That's how I learned.
Right.
And then I learned that you have to put people on payroll. I learned how to do that, and then we were doing payroll ourselves. And then I realized how much of a pain in the butt that is, and the
Yeah.
Mhm.
bookkeeping infrastructure. And then I got a
Ugh.
payroll company, and then we started doing really well. I mean, we were growing, steadily,
Mhm.
and then we were doing really well. And then I was like, well, I want to give people, health benefits and insurance and stuff like that.
Mhm.
And that's when I found that it was easier to go union than to get my own plans
Sure.
and manage that and stuff like that.
So how many years in would you say that was when you kind of crossed into that?
We started doing payroll in 2017. I hope the IRS ain't listening.
They are. The
Um,
IRS is a big fan of this podcast. I will warn you.
yeah,
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
Oh, I know all those guys.
Yeah. Yeah. Sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because they're all
Yeah.
Italian.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Um, and then we went union in 2019, I think.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. So
2019.
4 or 5 years ago for that, and
Yeah,
then maybe.
maybe it was end of 18, beginning of 19, somewhere in there is when I went union. I can't remember.
And it's interesting. So given that I look at where you're at and I'm like, oh man, I hope that's where I can be in 10 years time, because we're still so just new to the whole thing. But my the Rubicon that I feel caught in right now is, it's like all of us, we all have the common thread. We just want to make cool stuff, right?
Mhm.
And then you realize really quick your job becomes like you're this just big administrative project manager. A lot of the time you're dealing with fire after fire that has nothing to do with actually creating any. I mean, you're creating something amazing, right? You're creating a facility to allow these, the mechanisms to have a team of people make cool stuff, which is great
Mhm.
and awesome, but it really disconnects you from like where the rubber meets the road a lot of the time. So what advice do you have, Frank, in terms of like how do you still satiate that desire to just get your hands dirty and not get too overwhelmed with the mechanics of the business side so that you don't burn out?
Oh, the burnout's real. That's probably never going to go away, and I'm always going to have to, walk that line between, having to be stuck in the office and doing it. Like I have a stack of papers here on my desk that, like, with lists of
Mhm.
things that I need to get to. Like
Yeah.
we're in the process of getting our spray booth put in because we just moved into this new building, and like I got to go fill out AQMD forms. Like, and it's just like, but I want to like go do fun stuff, like,
Yeah. Yeah.
um
Yeah.
I don't know, it sucks. I don't know. I
It's
wish
it's
that somebody else would do it,
eh,
but whatever, like whatever.
I know, but it's not something you can't just like bring somebody in to
Yeah.
just handle all that. I mean, maybe you can, but I don't even know where
You
to begin to look
kind of
for that.
can, but it's cost prohibitive at this scale.
Mhm.
Like if I was like a big, multi-million dollar, if I was a multi-million dollar, like tens of millions of dollar company, right?
Yeah,
Then
Mhm.
then you would hire a contractor and they would just handle all of this stuff. But there's
sure.
still admit,
Mhm.
or I'd have a project manager that handles.
Throw
But
some money at the problem.
Sure.
yeah,
Yeah.
well, yeah,
Yeah.
you put staff and middle management on those things, and
Mhm.
that's how I wouldn't have to deal with it.
Which I'm sure
Um,
comes with its
Mhm.
own challenges as well.
yeah,
But
of course.
yeah, but it's
But
all trade offs. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. Like,
Mhm.
do I really want to spend that kind of money on somebody else doing this, where it's just like I just need to suck it up and go do it?
Uh huh.
Um,
Mhm.
so it's a balance, like figuring out like what stuff I do farm out and what stuff I do figure out
Sure.
on my own.
Sure.
But I don't
Well,
know. I
well,
mean,
what I saw clearly was, another common thread between us is you very much have the mentality. It's like, oh, I can do this, or I can figure it out. Like it's problem solving,
Mhm.
right? And
Mhm.
Yep.
so as long as you have the mindset that it's just like I can do it, I don't want to do it necessarily, and then you decide, you evaluate, is it worth the money, is it worth the time, and then you go in between. Do you try to carve out some time where you get there? I mean, are you still doing some, are you painting? Are you
Mm.
you doing it all
Oh yeah.
still? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like on the project we're doing right now, like I've been doing a bunch of the 3D work for like some internal structures of this thing that we're building.
Mm-hmm.
I did all the paint tests and all of the like early samples of how we're going to do things. And once we get into, you know, the final assembly of what we're building, I'm going to end up doing a lot of the painting because I enjoy it. You know, and figuring out the methodology of how we're going to build this thing and how we're going to accomplish what we need to do. Like, I'm very much involved in that. I mean, I love that aspect of it. And I, you know, um, the team is like, I try to always hire people that are like way better than me, but they're like
Mhm.
extensions of my arms. They're like really good versions of my arms.
Yeah.
Like, this is how we should
Mhm.
do, you know, like, so I'm just a captain steering a boat, but maybe that
Mhm.
other guy's like really good at pulling an anchor in. I'm kind of skinny or whatever, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
you just, yeah,
Yeah.
something like that. I don't know.
Yeah. That's good. So you
Bad
mentioned
analogy.
no, no,
It's
no,
a
no,
bad
no.
analogy.
It's a perfect. It would not be the worst analogy ever thrown out here. I'll tell you that. But you know, we're good at bad metaphors and analogy here.
Yeah.
Mhm. Absolutely.
I think it's a perfectly fine one. And you know, we hear that phrase to surround yourself with people that are better than yourself. You know, a
Mhm.
lot of times. I got that is 100%.
Mhm.
You know,
The only
wise.
people that don't are the ones that have an ego problem.
Mm, mm.
Yeah,
Mm.
because then they want to
Yeah,
keep
that's
everybody down
I,
to
I
Mhm.
I
keep them
have
at the
I have to imagine you run into that, especially in the industry you're at.
movie industry. Yeah,
Yeah.
there's so much that
Yeah.
I have to juggle with. You have to figure out whether people are making their decisions based on ego,
Mm.
um,
Mm.
or greed. Um, you know,
Yeah.
yeah,
It's an
not
interesting
everybody. Yeah.
So
that's an interesting point.
one of the challenges I've noticed too is like you're working on these massive epic projects a lot of times that you can't even talk about, right?
Yeah.
Because some of these productions are like, you know, years in the making, right?
Hmm.
And so
Oh yeah.
you know,
I
you
worked on the first when I worked on Star Wars on the Force Awakens. It was like almost 2 years between when I worked on it and when I could talk about it.
yeah.
Wow.
And so and by the time you can talk about it, you're already on to the next, you know, couple things too.
Mhm.
And so
Yeah.
you were talking about earlier, like, oh, well, you know, we don't feel like our social media moves the needle as much and all that stuff. Do you think a lot of that has to do with the timing of it? Or is it just the caliber of people? They're like, I don't care what's on your Insta. I mean, at some point you need to have your portfolio together.
Well, yeah. I mean, that's kind of what it is. Like, there's a ton of stuff. Like, I just keep forgetting. Like, I haven't posted almost anything from Black Adam. Like, we worked on a whole bunch of stuff from that movie, and I keep forgetting to dig through my computer to find those pictures to post about the stuff we built on Black Adam, and
Yeah.
that came out months ago. You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
Yeah.
we did work on Dungeons and Dragons, which came out a couple weeks ago. Um, and
Mhm.
thankfully, I just happened to have the pictures like at my fingertips. So I was like, okay, I'll post. And so for 3 days, I posted, and then and then I don't know when I'm going to post anything again.
And
You
then you're
know?
on to the next
And
thing.
then silence. Yeah.
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 But I mean,
So
it's so funny because he's so humble. I'm walking through there. I'm like, oh my
Yeah.
god, this was in this was in Black Adam. This
Mhm.
was in Dungeons and Dragons. And I'm like, why aren't you talking about this more? It was well because you're busy making the next thing, and sometimes you can't. And
Yeah.
you know, so
Well,
that's an interesting challenge.
so I would like to kind of circle back to a point that Frank was making earlier about, you know, having to walk the line with ego, you know, or other people or other individuals. You know, as maker entrepreneurs, like we often kind of build our organization in this model that Jim Collins, I think, coined so perfectly, which is like the genius with 1,000 helpers.
Mm,
You know, so we have this idea that, you know, the founder, the inception of the idea, you know, is key, and then you add a bunch of spokes to the wheel, which are the helpers helping the founder create something awesome.
another
You know,
analogy.
how do you, you know, how do you kind of combat that in sort of this industry? You know, as you were mentioning, like, you know, there are people that are doing it for greed, or there are people that are doing it very egotistically. You know, how do you separate yourself from being the capital founder to just a person who's actually helping the team, instead of, you know, being this genius with 1,000 helpers?
Mm.
well, I didn't call the place Frank Effects. You know, I didn't
That's
call the place.
probably a good start.
Yeah, I didn't call it Frankie and Co. I didn't call it any of the silly names
Mhm.
that I was, you know,
Frankie
drunkenly
goes
trying
to
to think of.
Burbank.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I actually have
Okay.
a really funny like little logo my friend drew me for Frankie and Co.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Um, but I didn't name it after me because this company isn't about me. You go look on our social
Mhm.
media, go look on our Instagram. there's very little pictures of me on there. Like it's almost always me raising up my crew and raising up the people that really do the stuff, like
Yeah.
Gary and Elena and
Yeah.
our painter Task, and like all these wonderful people.
Yeah.
Those are the ones that are really the lifeblood of the company.
Yeah.
And I purposefully don't make this about me, like, because it's I'm just another employee, really.
That's that's interesting because I feel like I keep running into these, and I understand there's different strategies for going about it, but like when people consider me and Repkord almost one and the same because I'm so interwoven in like what I'm doing and what we're
I'd say the same thing about me and Thingergy. Like people usually think of us at the same.
Right, but you
I
have
don't
a better
have to, like, toot that horn.
yeah.
It's just what it is,
Well, and to me, I think as a small business, a lot of times I think there's a lot of value in trying to show like, hey, this is who I am and this is what you are supporting. But there is a fine line, of course, between ego, and I know a ton of other small business owners that talk in the we voice and the third person more, and I think that's good. Or they'll have a separate account for the business account and the personal account like you do, Frank, and I think that's a good strategy too. I just don't have the time to want to manage each of those things, and so I'm just like, and I've told you too, like half of it for me is just kind of like I would do this for fun because it's like a kind of a journaling process of where I am in my life at a given point in time. So
yeah,
it's a weird mix of fart jokes that I think are hilarious plus some business stuff mixed in, which is such a weird amalgam. And I get people like, that's not very professional, but I'm like, well, I don't care if you think it's professional. I like it. So.
Like to that same point, I was thinking about this the other day. I'm like, fuck, I didn't take any pictures of us like goofing around or working when you were here.
I said the same thing when I got back. Like, I'm like, ugh.
Because I'm so like caught up in the moment.
Yeah.
And it's almost like I'm overcompensating for this like trend of everybody taking a selfie every 4 seconds, and I'm like, I don't need to take a picture. But then I'm like, fuck, why didn't I take any pictures?
That is such a fine line to walk because it's like I feel like I've talked to Andrew about this in the past too, and let us know in the chat what your feels are on this because. We we go to these great trade shows, we go to these events, we interact with some amazing people. These are friends that we've hold in high regard and all this stuff, and it's like I genuinely like the experience, and when I pause to take that selfie, that sets a tone a lot of the time where it's like I don't want to tell you, Frank, that I'm just down here because I want to get a selfie with Frank Ippolito at Thingergy. I want to be in the moment. We should have. It's a balance. It's like you need that photographer. I've always said I wish a drone just followed me around and just kind of did some documentation, so I didn't have to worry about it.
$1 billion idea, guys. Somebody's got to.
It's gonna happen.
Why does DJI not have one of these things already?
I mean,
selfie drone.
It goes a selfie drone. It lands. Think about the content creators. How much they would love that, right?
Yeah, it mounts to your backpack and it just comes up and floats around. And when it needs to recharge, it goes back onto your backpack. And
there you go.
Yeah,
$1 billion idea.
Somebody go make that.
Yeah, we'll sign us up. We'll take a few. But you know what I mean? Where it's like I don't want to set it, especially when you're first getting to know people. I don't want to set a tone because there's a lot of people out there that are literally just trying. To be, and you don't know that.
Wait a second. The first time I met you, you came into my shop and shot videos. Like almost the second you came into the shop.
Well, to be fair, okay, it's
busted.
It's awesome. Yeah, but I wasn't taking a bunch of selfies with you. I was like focused on the work. I was blown away by the work. I mean, I'm seeing these things that I've seen in Star Wars, in a movie, and all this stuff. I'm like, oh my god, and I can see it in front of me. And my buddy Andrew Sink, big Gundam fan. I'm like, that Gundam helmet that you have there, like, you just looking at the pictures on Instagram or when you do have it up there, doesn't really sell, So I was like, oh my god, you got to see this, and so I sent it, to people and stuff. But it was not meant to be. But that's what I'm talking about. I know you're giving me crap. But you get the point, right? And I used to complain about this with my own mom, like at holiday events. We're having a good time at the party, everybody's eating and talking, and she's like has to stop everybody and then get everybody together for the photo. We got to take the photo, and in the moment we all hated it because we were just like, hey, we're having a good time here. We don't want to go out in the backyard and take the photo, the group photo. But thank God she did, because it's like I look back on it now, I'm like, that was a really good party. So there's a balance, right?
Well, I just think that it's been overcompensating for some of this younger generation to do nothing but take selfies.
Nothing but
And
do
now
it.
I'm just
Yeah.
like, I don't want to be one of them,
I'm
like,
with you.
and so now we have to get back to that equilibrium
Right.
instead of the
Hmm.
overcompensating.
That's right. That's
Hmm.
right. It's a balancing act like anything. But I feel that there's always, well, we don't want to get caught.
Next
There's
time,
always time.
next time.
There's always
Hmm.
next time, and then
Yeah.
hopefully make sure that next time always keeps coming.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Okay, so uh, we've talked about ego. We talked about kind of where you are, where you're going. You're kind of teasing. Are you able to, maybe not in great detail, but kind of talk about some projects that you're currently working on in generalities?
Um, well, we've built big statues for video game companies in the past.
Mm-hmm.
We did some bunch of 10-foot tall statues for Borderlands. We did like six of them back
Yeah.
in
Wow.
2019. In
You did the
uh,
Cletus. That was for
yeah,
what,
we
the
did the
NFL?
Cletus. That
Yeah.
was in 2017, I believe.
That's a
It
character
was a
for the.
14-foot tall Fox Sports robot.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Wow.
We did a big like dragon creature sculpture for Monster Hunter for Ubisoft back in 2014, 15. So we've done a lot of big builds for video game companies. So we're
Big.
doing another one of
Hmm.
those things.
Yeah.
It was going to be for E3, but that got E3 went away because I
Hmm.
don't know. But it's going to be for something for another event.
Yeah.
So
That's
And
awesome.
and
that's
it's
about as general as I think I can get.
yeah, and it's
Big,
it's
big,
mixed media. Like obviously
yeah.
you'd mentioned you're having to
It's
make a
yeah,
skeleton and an exoskeleton and a
yeah. It's not quite as mixed media as the Borderlands statues were. That was a true like culmination of all of the skills that we do. But this one's pretty cool. I think it's gonna be rad.
he's
Awesome.
I'm
being
excited. I mean,
he's
I'm
being
excited about it.
humble. It's incredible. And the funny thing is, guys, until you build something at this scale, I've been humble. Frank mentioned at the top of the show, I've been doing a little consulting on it, so I've gotten to see it firsthand. And well, two things that strike me. One, how cool as a cucumber Frank is given the timeline of this thing and how ambitious it is, but that's what he does. And obviously when you draw from years of experience doing this kind of thing and knowing all the tools in your
Hmm.
toolbox and all this stuff, it's like, you know what? We'll get it done, and I 100% believe it will get done, and it will be epic and amazing and all of this stuff. And he's just being complete. Yeah, we'd be build big
You
stuff.
say cool as a cucumber, but what everybody doesn't see is me not sleeping at night.
Yeah.
Oh, there it is. There it is.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh yeah, just
Hmm.
I've been kind of banging my head against the wall with a metal fabricator. This guy that was going to weld up this internal framework, and just totally dropped the ball, and we're like weeks behind. And so I've had to like
Oh
jump back
no.
in, and I've had to redesign it, and I've had to get a new vendor, and we're back on track now. But for a handful of days, I was just like, what the literal
Yeah,
like
yeah, yeah,
what
yeah.
not what am I
Yeah.
going to do, but like, oh, I hate when somebody that's a professional and you've seen them do good work and they know what they're doing, but they just like, I don't know if this is just
Hmm.
like out of his league or it's just too big of a scope or whatever it is. And it's just, I just went down this path that was just like wrong.
Yeah.
Mm,
And
Yeah.
so I've had to course correct, grab a new vendor, like get everything back on track, which is a lot of legwork. And, like as soon as I get off of this podcast, I got to get back into Fusion 360 and finish this
Oh
redesign
wow.
of the armature,
yeah,
but it'll
yeah,
be fine.
yeah.
Just a little bit of work.
And you get your good days and your bad days, obviously, and
Yeah.
you go through the
Hmm.
process. And sometimes it just takes a little time to have that breakthrough and just stop, you know, feeling pissed about
Hmm.
it and just like, okay, let's work the problem, right?
Yep.
It's just like, and you fix enough problems, you get to go home, as they say, someday. But
He loves that quote.
I do love that quote. I love that book. I love that movie. It speaks to me on multiple fronts. And Frank's actually done work on that, I believe. Can you talk about that? Or you
Which
that
one?
was a personal one, right? The helmet,
What?
the Martian helmet.
Oh,
It's unfinished. I think you said you
yeah.
started
Okay,
doing it with
so a
that.
bunch of years ago,
Yeah.
when I was doing videos with tested.com,
Hmm.
Adam got access to the Martian costume when they were, when that movie came out and they were marketing that. And so we got the suit, it got delivered to my shop, and we spent a
Wow.
day patterning it and molding all the parts and and everything. And so we also got digital assets for us to recreate that costume. And this was back when I was on Tested all the time. And then Tested and I kind of, you know my business was growing. They were going in a different direction. And so I don't have any either, I don't have any reason to finish it for them. There's not like there's money. It's not like they're paying me to do it. And it's not like I'm getting any more content out of, being on the site. So it's just in boxes on the shelf. I do want to finish it for myself because I love that costume. The company that built it, FBFX, like they're really good guys. And I think that they do gorgeous work. And I'm a nerd. I like that kind of stuff. And so I want to finish that Martian costume one day.
Yeah.
And I will.
Yeah.
Awesome.
It's just another thing in the giant list of,
Oh, yeah.
You've seen the stacks and stacks of things that I have to finish one day.
Yeah. Yeah. How many, that's another common thread, right? It's like, how many projects do we have in progress at any given time? And it's a lot for me, as well. It's like, I should really finish that, but
that's a common thread between the maker entrepreneurs out there.
But then every once in a while, it's like, you know what?
It's like in our DNA.
I'm going to take that weekend and I'm going to do it. And and that's good. And that's grounding sometimes too. So,
And I've, when opportunities do come up for me to like knock a bunch of stuff off the list, I can get on a good roll. Like, like right after we moved into the shop and I got set up, the industry's been pretty slow because there's this pending strike, like writer's strike going on. And so there's just like no movie jobs going on right now. There's very few. And so because it was so slow, I just started pecking away at some of my to-do list. And it's been great. And then, this project came up. And so now I'm back on this horse, but or like when the pandemic hit, I got so much stuff done. Like when there was lockdown and nobody could come in, it was just me and my shop for that whole time, where everybody was stuck at home. I was stuck in, a 14,000 square foot workshop by myself with no phones ringing. It was great. And so I got a ton of stuff done. I started a couple of projects that I don't know when I'm going to finish them, but I also leveled up a lot and got to peck away at that to-do list.
Yeah, we were joking when I was down there. Frank's just waiting for the next pandemic, eagerly, so he can can get back to his happy place.
Welcome it with open arms.
Well, Frank mentioned that he took that time to level up. So to kind of go back to that the whole concept of building for tomorrow. What are some of the things that you're doing to kind of level up your business or build it so that maybe there is a separation event or something where it's not just Frank runs Thingergy. Thingergy can exist on its own.
I think
That's a good question.
In the hopes and dreams big picture, I think it would be great if I could find either a company to merge with or a partner to merge. So it's got to be the right fit because it's near impossible to find somebody to start with or somebody to get into a relationship with and get married or what. Like it's dangerous. So if I could find the right fit, that would be the way for it to happen. And I know I talked to you about this when you were down here. Everything's for sale, and any business person that doesn't think that everything is for sale all the time is running their business out of ego. Thingergy's for sale. I don't care. If somebody came with enough money and wanted to buy, I don't know that it's worth like what it's worth. Like what is the reputation, the Rolodex, my assets, what is this stuff worth? I don't know. But if somebody
but the point
if somebody saw value and wanted to like merge with me and grow to the next thing, that might be the out. But I don't know that will ever happen. It may not.
No, but that's an interesting mindset, and it struck me because we were having that conversation. I was like, it feels like just light years away. It's like my hope is that at some point all this work will ultimately come to fruition in the sense that it's like, I don't have a traditional 401k and all this stuff, but like I'm hoping this becomes a nest egg that I can sell or whatever. The thought of
maybe someone wants to just buy you to put you out of business so that they don't have a competition. Who cares?
I don't care why. I just want that there's an exit, but it's weird because it's like I'm so wrapped up in the day to day that I haven't even stepped back to think like, well, what am I building and how do I do that? Because like I said, right now, Pooch and Repkord are very much one and the same, and it's just like, well, that's not exactly the right thing, because if I get hit by a bus, then it's just doors shut down, and then all this work we've gone to build some, it's like, yeah, maybe we got
Mhm.
$100,000 worth of equipment, but that's nothing in the big scheme of like what, those
Mhm.
assets. Your company value is not the assets. It's the brand, like you said. It's the context. It's the experience. And so, if you're going to find somebody ultimately that wants to buy you, they need to believe that it will continue to have that value without you, right?
Mhm.
Mhm.
And so, a lot
Yeah.
of times there's a transitionary period and
Of
all that
course.
stuff,
But
obviously.
I've been strategic about that, like by not making me the center of the company and trying to, make it
Mhm.
Smart.
able to run on its own,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, so during kind of the planning of this episode, we were kind of talking, Pooch and I, about maker entrepreneurs and kind of our core personality traits. And again, it kind of all falls back to that genius, with 1,000 helpers. And in many cases, it sounds counterintuitive, but we as these maker entrepreneurs have to learn to make ourselves irrelevant. And so that
Irrelevant.
we,
Yeah.
yeah, irrelevant to
Yeah.
the point where if we could be removed from the thing, there is some lasting value. And so some of those things that we traditionally in business we talk about is just like, okay, intellectual property, is it processes, or documentation, is it skill sets, social capital, right?
Yeah.
So could you touch on some of the things that you've done at Thingergy, like to kind of build up that social capital, any intellectual properties or just knowledge bases that you've formed over the years?
I don't I don't even know how to answer that.
So,
Social capital.
Okay.
how about
Maybe
maybe
I'm a little confused on.
well,
Sure.
how about
So
this?
social capital.
He
Go
talked
ahead.
about the Rolodex. So, to me,
Yeah.
it seems like a
Yeah.
lot of what keeps that phone ring is just your reputation, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so,
The fact that we're a union shop and the phone, and I show up at the union meetings and network with people like
mm.
Mhm.
that. That's why the phone rings. Phone, yeah.
And
I
so,
don't take
Yeah.
out
So
ads.
social.
I don't take out ads.
yeah,
Social media doesn't get me the jobs.
Frank's the one entity
Sure.
left in the yellow pages these days.
Yeah.
And why nobody calls, I don't. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so I was kind of referring to just again like social capital in the sense of these are your people, these are the people inside the organization,
Mhm.
that relationship, kind of how you've been building up over time. It was a term coined again by Jim Collins, in his books Good to Great and Built to Last.
Um. God, I still don't even know how to answer that one. I'm sorry.
Sure, that's all
Yeah. I
right.
mean,
That's all right.
we
The
You
people.
just kind of find your way and
yeah. I kind of make more good decisions than bad. That's it. I don't know. Is that
There you
as
go.
long as I make 51% good decisions,
Yeah,
then
hey,
we'll get
that
to the
works.
next
Get
thing.
those
I don't
house odds. Yeah.
yeah, I don't know. I
Well,
don't
let me focus in on
I'm
an
sorry. I'm like flubbing that question. I
No,
don't
no,
know
no.
how to
You're
No,
not.
answer it.
no, that's totally fine.
That's a tough one. The people that you surround yourself with, the people that you hire. I mean, you
Mhm.
mentioned too, like whether it's your vendors or your employees and stuff like that. And that's a learning experience that takes some time and experience. Like everybody talks a good game when they're
Mhm.
first coming in,
Mhm.
right? Your resume. Everybody's resume looks great, and they're always the references. I mean, who's putting references that aren't going to give them a glowing reference, right? So
Yeah, you don't talk about your bad sides on your resume,
yeah,
right?
yeah. But ultimately, the people that you want to work with and want to work with you know that they understand what Frank and what Thingergy is about, and they are
Mhm.
on script,
Mhm.
for that. Um, as you get bigger and you're thinking about, okay, if this place is for sale, like are those people there because a lot of them are going to be there because they like working with you. And so it's like, if it gets sold, like, are they going to want to stick around? Like, how do you build a culture that is greater than just yourself? Is that where you have to start
I
getting
think
those middle managers involved and stuff like
I
that, where it's the ownership?
probably, but it's also sort of methodology. It's
Mm,
like how is it structured? I think
mm,
because
Mhm.
everybody structures a company like what we do different. Like the people that are my competitors, they're structured different than I am,
mm,
and so there's got to be just like that groundwork of like how is work divvied up, how is communication divvied up, how is your project
Mhm.
management run, how like what's the communication style, what's the like tone inside the building, like how
yeah.
there's
Mhm.
some workshops that I've gone to where it's just like silent, every like you have your headphones on and the whole place is
Everyone's
silent.
working
But when you were
individually.
here, like we all have music
Oh, the
on,
music's
Gary's singing, like
going.
we're
Yeah, yeah.
like
I was singing. Everybody
it's
was singing. It
yeah
was great.
yeah it's just like but it's you know,
Smell of polyurethane is in
So,
the air.
yeah,
The smell of making, is
yeah,
present at all times.
yeah.
There's, but it's interesting because Frank will very much, he's got to go off. He goes to his office, takes a call, does,
hmm
big cheese boss man stuff, but then he's right back out there and immediately like hands on and in that. And I'm thinking about it, it's like how do you even define what the culture is? Well, it's like you just know
hmm
what feels right, and it feels right because you're just in it at the moment. But I guess that's when you start to get to a level where it's I don't know.
maybe the problem is that we can't define what the hell I'm doing. So maybe that's where my problem is right now. If I could define and figure out how to
hmm
explain it and quantify it, then it'll become more valuable. But because I'm just like, I don't know, we just do things.
But then it
That's
feels
maybe
Yeah.
that's something I got to work on.
I don't know
You
that
know,
that's a problem, man. I feel like that's a
But it might
strength.
be, yeah, I was gonna say it might be some of your biggest strengths, because it sounds like, again, this is how one of you've actually avoided a massive issue potentially of, you have this top down kind of, C-level executive, and then middle management, and then, employees. Instead, you're just part of the team, and you guys just all throw in together to get the project done, or to get the job done, because that's what's important, and that's how you provide that lasting value. So,
maybe.
it might not necessarily be a problem, but it's
Uh,
definitely cool to learn about this culture, because there's so many times, like, I've seen startups take this approach of, okay, I'm the capital F founder, and everything branches out from me.
Mm,
And in part, when it comes to decision making, or the vision of the company, everyone's waiting or looking up to the founder, and no one wants to question their decisions.
mm.
And it creates this paradox, if you will, that prevents the company from growing, because you have one person who ultimately is in control.
Mm,
You know.
mm,
yeah. There's probably a little bit. I think that might be somebody that's leading based on ego or greed.
mm,
hmm
Because they think that,
Sure.
well, I'm in charge, so I'm going to go take a vacation. I'm in charge, so I
hmm
need a big salary. I'm in
hmm
charge, so I'm going to hire somebody to do all the things that are too tough to
Yeah.
do. Like,
Yeah.
um,
Sure.
you know, uh, yeah, I never thought of it. I think of, like, most of the time I think of middle management as a huge waste of space,
and
and
money and
hmm
time and
that
yeah.
Yeah.
bureaucracy of just an extra person and an extra layer of communication. Like, I've attempted to have project managers in here before. I've tried hiring people to be, like, kind of shop supervisors or something like that.
Sure.
They're all useless tits. Like, maybe, and maybe I was just hiring the wrong person, or maybe they weren't the right fit for me,
Yeah.
or maybe they're just straight up useless tits. It was um it just didn't work. They just wanted to like sit and brood on their laptop and drink their coffee, and it's just like, well, what are we doing? What value are you adding to this?
Sure.
I'm a people
I'm like,
person. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And it's just like, I don't see anything moving any faster than if I didn't have you here. I don't see anything any
hmm
more organized than if I didn't have you here. It's not like you came
Sure.
in and after 3 months, it's like, wow, this place is great. This is humming. It's like,
Sure.
Well,
no,
Yeah.
you just wanted a fat paycheck to sit there and,
I just
you
And
know,
and type away on your keyboard. Yeah.
I
yeah,
really
it's like, oh, I'm
struggle with
busy.
this because I'm totally with Frank on this, and it feels like one of these
hmm
things where we just go, well, like I don't know exactly what it is, but I know it when I see it. And
hmm
when you bring people in, like the process guy in me wants to define, like, okay, well, we need to have so and so. Like, I want to solve the hit by a bus problem. Like, I want to know
hmm
that that the company can operate. If I do. I want to be able to go on vacation. Frank wants to be able to go on vacation. I want to know I can leave for a week,
Been trying.
and stuff isn't going to come grinding to a halt.
hmm
But I don't want to
Yeah.
pay out the nose for that luxury either. So,
hmm
that's where I start playing with, like, people don't care unless they really feel like they've got skin in the game in a certain way a
Hmm.
lot of the time.
Yeah,
And
they
that's
have
expensive in a
no
different way.
they have nothing to lose if it fails. If this company
Yeah.
fails, my project manager will just go to another shop and they'll say, "Oh, well, Frank didn't
hmm
run the company well, so that's why it failed." It's like,
hmm
like, if I got the company going and it's chooching along for
Sure.
10 years and then this person comes in and we're dead after one project,
Mm,
that's not my failure, you know?
Yeah.
Um,
Mm.
uh, so that I mean, they have nothing to lose. If I go out of business, it's my ass.
Yeah.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
so those people don't. They just want to sip their coffee and collect their paycheck.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I haven't found a shop supervisor or middle management that I can afford that's worth it. Now there's people out there, like a buddy of mine just left another company. Man, if I could afford it, he would be the perfect person to run this place.
Yeah.
Um,
Sure.
Money, man, money.
I can't afford
Yeah.
him because he's
Mm-hmm.
that good.
Yeah.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
That's
so
another.
anybody that is worth their shit, it's way out of my price
Yeah.
range. Um,
Sure.
and when we were talking about having somebody so that I can go on vacation, it's like, yeah, okay. So do I want to add another line item to my yearly budget, a $90,000 a year line item, so that I can go on
Mm-hmm.
vacation for 10 days?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
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 No.
Well, and given the cycle, it's interesting because you're a job shop. Given the cyclical nature of things, like you'd mentioned to me, you've turned over entire batches of employees multiple times
Twice. Yep.
over. Yeah, that there's a scaling up and a scaling down. The human capital aspect of what you do is it's got to be beneficial
Mm-hmm.
in some business ways, but also really frustrating because it's like I know you want to keep people busy, you like being able to, but I think a lot of you mentioned a lot of your employees love that they can just come on for a job and then they can take a little break and they know that when the time is right and you got another gig that's appropriate for them, you'll call them up, and that's the strategy: flexing up,
Yeah.
flexing down,
Mm-hmm.
and being okay with that.
But not every industry is set up that way.
That's right.
And the film
Sure.
industry really is set up to be that kind of gig based, job economy.
Right.
and
Mm-hmm.
and then the added layer of me being a union shop, so that no matter where that person goes, what job they go to,
Mm-hmm.
they still keep their benefits.
Yeah.
Where
Mm-hmm.
a lot of
It's
the people that
huge.
are my competition, I have for for the movie industry, so we're mainly props and costumes, right? And so the prop
Mm-hmm.
union is the 44 and the costume union is the 705. So those are the two big pools of people that we pull from, a couple of like paint union and blah blah blah, but those are our
Mm-hmm.
big things. So if I need a prop maker, I can call the hall and I can get a bunch of phone numbers, and right now nobody's working, so I have the pick of the litter, and I could say I need you for a week, for 2 days, for one day.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. They come in, they get their union benefits, and then they can go to another show or another shop or whatever, and you can work
Mm-hmm.
on set or you can work on at a facility like mine. Same thing with costumes.
Mm.
But not every industry is set up that way. And then within our industry, there's a bunch of non-union companies that aren't set up that way.
Mm.
So there's a couple of
Sure.
my competitors that are non-union shops that don't have this union benefit. So if somebody has golden handcuffs over at XYZ
Mm-hmm.
company, if you stay here, you'll have benefits. But once they don't have work, or once you're not there, or they go to another shop, they don't have that benefit anymore. So
Sure.
Sure.
I've I I've been kind of loudly calling all these people cowards that they don't go union, because the movie industry, especially specialty costumes and props and all this stuff, is a unionized industry. And for all these other facilities that haven't done what I did, I just think that they're
Mm-hmm.
cowards, because it makes my life easier. The union doesn't like
Mm-hmm.
tell me how to run my business. It just provides
Sure.
a better um, a better way of living for all of our employees that we all share. Because
Mm-hmm.
all of my competitors, we all share the same employees. Like,
Mm-hmm.
why not,
Yeah.
make
Yeah.
everybody get the same benefits?
I mean, that sounds like a massive strategic advantage to you,
No.
by
It
leveraging that.
is. I mean,
So,
in some ways it is, because
hmm
I could hire these really, really great union craftspeople. And I could also
hmm
hire the non-union ones and then get them in the union, or I
Yeah.
could hire the
sure.
non-union ones on a non-union project, and it doesn't matter. But
hmm
Guys, we're closing in on the hour, and boy, does time fly when you're having fun. But there is a question
hmm
in the chat that I'm hoping maybe you both want to opine on real quick before we close. Frank, are you good on time? I know you got a lot of work to
yeah,
do. Okay.
I'm fine.
All right. Well, we'll wrap it up here.
Yeah, I'm not in any rush.
Engineered AF in the chat mentions if you want somebody that you can't afford, we're talking about wanting to hire the person but you can't
Mhm.
afford. He says, well, then you clearly have to offer equity. That's startup 101. Do you agree with that?
Sure.
The one person that I'm talking about that I can't afford, Um,
Mm-hmm.
even if I had offered a percentage of this company
Mm-hmm.
is not uh, profitable enough to make up that difference. That's how
Mm-hmm.
much money this person makes. Like
Sure.
at the place that he ended up landing,
Yeah.
I
Mm-hmm.
can't afford that,
Yeah.
even with equity.
Yeah.
And sure, you can call anything startup 101 or, toilet talk
I
101. I
love
don't,
it. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
great. I'm not trying to be a jerk to you, but like, what does that fucking mean?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
yeah, anything could be called 101. Yeah, sure. I'll just give equity so that people have that like fear of
Mm-hmm.
failure. At the end of the day, if the company goes under, he'll just go somewhere else too. And I'm left with,
Mm-hmm.
something I've built over 20 years that's now in rubble.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Doesn't
So
quite, it's not quite the same.
Not quite the
yeah,
same.
I
If
feel
somebody wants
exactly where
equity,
Frank's coming from.
they have to give me money, like,
You got to invest. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
they
So
have to invest in me, not just like, oh, I want this project manager that I can't afford,
Well,
or I want
that's
this
a really good
engineer I
yeah,
point.
can't
It's a
afford.
two-way
Like,
street. That's a
it
totally
is a
different
two-way street. Mm-hmm.
involvement, and I
yeah,
think
and
it's
so
Now,
yeah.
so do I sacrifice, okay, to this
mm-hmm.
point, do I sacrifice a percentage of the equity of my company
Mm-hmm.
and this enormous salary, which is more than I make, so I
Mm-hmm.
could take 10 days off a year and go on vacation? Like,
No, hopefully it's for reasons bigger than just the vacation, though.
but you
So
know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
so when we're
mm-hmm.
talking equity, like if
Yeah.
there's somebody wants equity in my company, they have to bring like a financial influx. Like, you want 49% of my
Mm-hmm.
company, cool, bring in 5 million bucks and we're gonna make everything nicer in here, and we're gonna get bigger, we're gonna do whatever, like
Yeah.
we're gonna
Yeah. Yeah.
staff
Sure.
up and
Yeah.
blah blah blah. You have to
Sure.
buy the equity. Like, somebody's like, okay, so even if this person, let's just make an imaginary number. Let's say that this
Mm-hmm.
person wants $500,000 a year for salary, right?
Yeah.
And I say, well,
Mm-hmm.
I can't afford a $500,000. I can afford $100,000 a year. And in exchange for that, I'll give you 5% of my company. If the company
Yeah.
fails, 5%, who cares?
Yeah.
And then they're losing out
So
on $400,000. I can't make up $400,000 of extra income.
yeah.
It's a real
What?
like, oh, it's
Yeah.
101. That's a really fuzzy gray area math. That's yeah.
Yeah. So how
Not
I've
so.
seen it done, and in my experience, so I've had a previous company where we went out and we raised venture capital, around the tune of about $2.5 million over the course of a couple of years.
Mm,
Typically as these companies, these startups, that are venture backed, you set aside what we call an option pool. And the option pool is for key hires or employees that you reward those with those stock options, because you might not be able to pay them their $200,000 a year salary for a key engineer. So you offer, hey, we're a startup. You're going to get all of the cool flexibility, the funness of the startup. You're going to get $100,000, but we're going to give you 1 or 2% of the company. Now, yes, today that is nothing in comparison to what your salary is. But if you believe in the idea and the potential over time, as we continue to grow, that 1-2% that you own is going to be worth 10 million, 20 million, whatever it might be, if the company's successful.
Well, that's a big if. Yeah, for a lot of
It
people.
comes back down to the
that's
big
a huge
if,
gamble.
and it's
Yeah.
not right. It's not right for every company. And like for the previous one that we did, we had a 10% option pool, and then we had to re-up and we had to make it another 5% larger. Now, every time you raise another round as a company, the pie doesn't get bigger. Like you still always have 100% of the pie. It's just when you have to issue more shares, everyone has collectively a little bit skinnier piece of pie.
And hopefully
And
the
so
pie is
each
worth
time
more.
we do
Yeah.
that, like, yeah, the pie is hopefully worth more. And it could be a benefit, but in many cases for small businesses or even medium-sized businesses that have bootstrapped, giving equity doesn't really, it's not going to be something that's necessarily super valuable unless you believe, or the person believes, that there is going to be something where, hey, me joining the thingergy, I'm going to be able to bring in my Rolodex of people at these movie shops or whatever, and we're going to be able to get so many more contracts, and we're going to grow this thing even bigger. um
Well, not just
Yeah,
that, but there has to
I
be
get
an
it.
exit for them to get that value too.
There
So they
has
have
to
to
be an
believe
exit,
that you're
exactly.
yeah. So
Hmm.
anyway, go ahead,
Yeah.
Frank.
Yeah, no. Well, the person that I'm talking about, where they landed, like, he's actually, I'm watching in the other screen. He's texted me because we're working on a project together. His company is hiring us to do
That's
some
awesome.
projects with them. So the relationship's not
Hmm.
gone.
Yeah,
It's not,
yeah,
Hmm.
yeah.
we're still working together because we're buddies. We like each other. He's super, super talented. And now he's running other stuff where he's like, hey, I need your help because you're good at your stuff, so we
There's
work. And I've also
Hmm.
connected him with other projects.
yeah.
So
Yeah.
we're still all within our Rolodex and within our little spider's web.
Uh-huh.
He's
Hmm.
just not helping me run the company, but he
Yeah.
is helping
Yeah.
me in other ways by bringing jobs in and vice versa.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. So I mean, that's a fantastic point too. It's like, you never know where relationships are going to lead, and it, what's right for people at certain times in their life. Like, who knows, like,
Hmm.
down the road, maybe that is an option. Like what you talk about in the traditional venture capital funded world, Andrew,
Oh,
is
completely
obviously
different.
totally
Yeah.
different from a bootstrap startup.
And the
Hmm.
movie industry is so ridiculously misrun and upside down. Like, we talked about this a
I'm
little bit when you were
sure.
down here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, everybody goes, "Oh, the movie industry, that's where they really do it right. They have all this money to make all the things." If you saw how the sausage was made over here, you guys would be like, it is literally a miracle that any show ever gets made and it ever gets finished. You're just like, it's always like the seat of your pants, it's on fire. You're, sliding in like covered in dirt
Hmm.
to the finish line. Like, it's
Yeah.
always a nightmare and it's always wrong. And it's always like, that shouldn't be the way you do it. And case in point, if
Sure.
you go watch that Netflix series called The Movies That Made Us,
Hmm.
watch it. Every single show, all of these, like the greatest shows we've ever seen, almost never got made. And
Right.
it was always like up until the very last second, it wasn't Ghostbusters wasn't going to be called Ghostbusters because they were going to be sued by the people that own that name, or like
Oh, wow.
everything
Hmm.
is always like a train wreck and on fire. And that's in the movie industry. It's ridiculous. And this
Yeah.
business isn't necessarily for everybody. And like, I've had some employees that have learned that the hard way. Um, but
I can see how it'd bring a
it,
lot of stress potentially. I mean, it's just always on
it
fire,
does.
and then you're
Yeah.
just trading it off for the next thing.
Timelines are always horrible. The budgets are never as
Hmm.
much as you need.
Hmm.
Clearly I've built this, so there's opportunity to do it right and to carve out a little niche
Hmm.
that's not a train wreck all the time. But
Hmm.
I get a call that this company needs 100 or 200 things in 9 days, and okay, cool, we'll figure it out. Like, there we do all these like weird things in very ridiculous timelines.
Yeah.
But that's not for everybody. And
No,
it's
it's not.
Sure.
And how do you
and
keep
it's
it
a
from
mirror and it's
aging
always a
you?
miracle that anything ever gets done.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. One last thing that I'd love to wrap up on, because we did talk about this as well. And when you're going through these potentially high stress things, low budget, low time, time frame, and all that stuff, there's times where you got to be comfortable with saying no. You got to be direct with people. The communication component. That's the biggest frustration for us a lot of times. Like, we're pretty straight shooting people. If you can get it done, cool. If you can't, tell me you can't. Don't jerk me
Hmm.
around. And you
Yeah.
learn pretty quick who you can work with and who you can't as a result of that. What is your barrier? Because I know that you want to be able to keep that work coming in, but then
Mhm.
what are your red flags that you're looking at that say, you know what, this is a pass?
Um, when I have a client that doesn't work as hard for me as I'm working for them. Um,
Hmm.
so the way that this works, and I'll give you a couple examples real quick. So there was a major studio that has an archives department, and they said, "Hey, we would like you to make some mannequins for us, some custom mannequins to display some costumes from some very known
Hmm.
properties, right?" And they said, "Our last vendor is closing up, and this is how much they were charging for these things. We would love to be able to do it cheaper because that was a lot of money, and they were the only people that were doing it. And they would have this like 6-week lead time or something crazy. And I was
Okay.
like, oh, I could do that almost half the price and in like 2 weeks, like without batting an eye.
Yeah.
And they were
Hmm.
like, cool. Well, let's do a first one. Let's do a sample.
Yeah.
So we went and we scanned some assets. We built a mannequin. Um,
Hmm.
and this was all in good faith because this is an enormous studio, right? That's been
Hmm.
around for probably about
Sure.
100 years,
100
right?
years. Yeah.
And so I built this thing, and they came over and they put the costume on. It was great. This is awesome. I was like, cool. Here's the invoice. I'll finish, put the last coat of paint on it, and we'll get it to you tomorrow, or whatever. Here's the invoice. And they said, oh, uh, we're net 45. And I was like, you're gonna net 45 me on a $7,000 thing I just floated? I was like,
Oh
no, no, no.
man.
Here's an invoice, and this, I'm truncating the whole
Yeah.
conversation. And I was
Sure.
like, no, here's the invoice. When you figure out how to pay me, I got your mannequin here.
Yeah.
And they were like, but that's not how our AP system works. You
Mm.
need to go into a vendor portal and set up your vendor, and you need to enter your
Oh
banking
man, I
details,
feel
and you need
this.
to enter your invoice details.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
Hmm.
I can't just hand you an invoice and you get AP to cut me a check.
I give you invoice, you give me check. Yeah.
Yeah, and I was like,
Hmm.
Yeah.
and by the way, this thing's already done. You've seen it. You've with your eyes, like you were here. You know that it's finished. You're gonna make me wait
Hmm.
40. I'm gonna give this to you and then wait 45 days for $7,000. And they were like,
Yeah.
sorry, that's just how we do it. So I said, thanks, but no thanks. And they're like, but you finished the mannequin. I'm like, it's cool. Don't worry about it. So that so that relationship, I'm just like, I'm not worried about it. Because they weren't willing to figure out how to make AP
Hmm.
fucking cut a check for something that
Hmm.
I did faster and cheaper than their last vendor. Not
Yep.
interested in that relationship. Other thing,
Mm.
and Pooch, you were here and you kind of saw this. We got a call from another enormous tech company, big, huge monolith, said, hey, we need
Hmm.
200 or 165 of these things in 9 days for a commercial we're shooting. And I was like, all right, I'll figure it out. I go, but if I'm building it this fast, you got to like pay me fast.
Yeah.
And they're like, yeah, we have one of these crazy AP systems. He goes, but wait, I'll have our production company pay you, and then we'll just cycle it that way. That way you get taken care of quickly. And I was like, rad, we're in. And
Yeah.
we did it, and it was fine. And now I have a
Hmm.
relationship with them, and I'm going to do more work for them because they were just like, oh, you're going to work fast for me?
They
I'm going to work
figured it
fast
out.
for you. Well, we're going to be great.
Hmm.
Don't worry about it. And they've been excellent
Hmm.
to deal with. So
Hmm.
if a vendor or a client doesn't work as hard for me as I'm going to work for them, I don't care who you are, you know.
Yeah. That's a really good answer, and I know it's a tough one just to wrap on it because there's a ton of large companies out there that are very abusive of their vendors in
Hmm.
this way because they're like, well, you clearly you want to work with us. We're the
Yeah,
big wig and all this stuff,
Yep.
and it's I think it's powerful. I think it's powerful to say like, no, that's not. I'm not going to be treated that way.
yeah,
But they're like, well, fine, we'll
Hmm.
find somebody else that will. It stinks
yeah.
though, because
And
Yeah.
yeah, and someone will always bend over. And there's,
yeah,
you know, like we do a lot of work for Disney Imagineering.
yeah,
Those and everybody's just like, oh, Imagineering, they take forever to pay. Nope, clockwork, 14 days, clockwork. I send the
Hmm.
invoice. Somebody on their end puts it into the system. I get a notification 10 days later, hey, your transfer's coming in. And then 4 days after that, it hits my bank.
I
Like
think
That's
you because
awesome.
clockwork.
you've
Hmm.
set a precedent that you're not okay.
Hmm.
And honestly, I found
But
that to
that's
be
how,
true with a lot of companies. That if you're like,
Hmm.
no, I'm not extending 45 days. I will do 50. If you want to work with me, this is the deal. And
Hmm.
sometimes there's
Yep.
that you just gotta do that give and take. It's a negotiation, I guess.
yep.
Yeah,
Hmm.
Yep.
good note, man.
But yeah, you need to have somebody on that side of the fence that knows that value
Yeah,
of making sure that their vendors are taken care of. Like, I have vendors too that like I take
Hmm.
care of them. Like,
yeah. I got to pay my
wherever,
people. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
like I take care of, I take care of people downstream.
Hmm.
You do, and that's why it pisses me off the most. Is it's like if ever there's a company that can afford to pay, you would hope the big guys,
Hmm.
So wait, now I
Yeah.
gotta wait to pay my guy. Like I've got people to
Mhm.
pay too, and I don't
Yep.
have a big, bank account
Yeah.
to just ride that storm. Um,
Yep.
so
Yep.
good answer, man. That's awesome. Frank,
Hmm.
we could go, like I say, hours and hours just keeping talking. This is always a pleasure. I'm really glad that I got to go down and see a lot of how the sausage is made in your shop because I love it. It's fantastic.
Hmm.
You got a great place. You got good people. And you do just the best projects. And I know you can't always get to talk about it right away, but I hope you keep
Well,
sharing because it's really cool stuff.
yeah,
We'd
we
love to see
try.
more
We
of it.
try.
Love to see more of it. And thanks so much for your time today, man. This was a great
Oh,
conversation. We'll have to do it again soon.
yeah. Thanks for having me, guys.
Okay,
Yeah,
everybody, thank you for tuning in. It's another one in the can. We will catch you in 2 weeks, because next week we are going to be at the Rocky Mountain Rep Rap Festival, so we're gonna be dark for that week, but we'll be back. What is it? The 28th for another episode of Maker That Money. Until then, everybody have a great weekend. We will catch you soon. Bye bye.